Greetings, BUSN 1305 Introduction to Business Students. This is Dr. McGrory, and I am reaching out to you whether you are in one of my Tuesday classes or the Thursday class. I'm making this video just in case. I have a couple things that may happen this week, and if they do, it may impede my ability to effectively talk to you and meet with you this week. So just in case, I'm knock on wood, it's not going to happen, but just in case, I'm making this video in advance for you and in hopes that I will not need it and will just meet with you anyway. Welcome back from spring break. That's the first thing I want to say. I hope you were safe and I hope you enjoyed a little bit of a break. If you were like me, you caught up on a lot of things that needed to be done over the break. I think it's kind of funny when we think back, Friday before we started on spring break, it was snowing. And then through our week of spring break, we had highs that were up at like 77 degrees. So you have experienced all seasons this week during your spring break. But it is spring. We're officially actually in spring now, and the pollen is in the air, And if you suffer from allergies, then I know that you understand. But I'm glad you're here with me, and this is our class for today. So I hope that you enjoy this lecture, and a little one-sided today, but some things for you to think about. Excuse me. So today we're going to talk about our Chapter 8, and this is in accordance with our class schedule because we're following our weekly schedule, and that means that you've finished your Chapter 7 assignments in accordance with the schedule and the due dates, right? You're monitoring that. You finished that, all your Chapter 7 assignments. You did any late work that you had for chapters 1 through 6. Now that was, you've had a lot of opportunity to do that late work for chapter 1 through 6. And test 1, if for some reason you did not use all 3 of your attempts and you didn't get the best score, remember you had that late opportunity to improve your score on test 1. So that was really all the week before the break, and then spring break, so you've had some time to work on that. And now, today, in accordance with your class schedule, we are starting into Chapter 8. And this is about structuring the organization. And we're going to talk more about what that means. But I thought we'd start by asking a few questions that could guide your career. All right, so think about, your professional life. When you graduate, you've got this degree. Think about, what are you going to do with it? What do you want to do with it? That's really what this is about. All right, so I want to ask you a question. Usually I would have you type this in the chat box, but I really want you to think about this just personally, because there's not a right or wrong answer. This is, what do you want out of your career? So the question is, which job would you rather have? Would you rather A, have a job where your responsibilities are wide-ranging, meaning you participate in the whole process, you develop and use a lot of different skills? For some folks, this is the dream job. For other people, it is stressful. They would much rather have job responsibilities that are focused. They want to just target their skills in a very specific direction, perform a certain role, develop and use a set of skills that are focused on your task. You're part of the process. Which one of those would make you happy? Just think about that. Wide-ranging, participate in the whole process, develop and use a lot of different skills. Or B, more focused, perform a certain role, develop and use a set of skills that are focused on your tab. No right or wrong answer. So what would you like? I'm going to ask you another question. Another career question. Think about this. In your job, would you rather work for an organization where decision-making, authority, responsibility is at the top, and is only at the top? That's the people who make the decisions. Or D, right, because the first question, your choices were A and B. So this is the second question. Your choices are C or D. D, work for an organization where decision-making, authority, and responsibility is delegated. to lower level managers, maybe your immediate boss, maybe you if you are that boss. Which one of those appeals to you? You want only the people at the very top to make the decision, or you want that to filter down to the lower levels? For some folks, they just want that person at the top to make the decision. We'll wait as long as it takes, get that decision, right? Other people say, no, why can't we just make it right here in my team, in my department? Why can't I make that decision? If I'm a supervisor, why can't I just make that decision? So which group do you fall into? What is your happy place? How about this question? This is question 3. How about this question? Your choices are E or F. Would you rather work for an organization where you know and you see the owner or at least that very top level person routinely? And there are very few levels of management, and so there are very few opportunities for promotion. If there's not a lot of levels, then there's only so many seats, right, that you can get promoted into. So maybe there's not a lot of tiers to your organization. There's just kind of like the boss and maybe, one level of management and then you. You can walk into the boss's office, casually share ideas, ask questions, address problems directly to the owner, to this very top level person, anytime. Do you like that? Or would you rather F, work for an organization where there are many levels? As a result, there's lots of opportunity for internal promotion within that same organization. You don't have to quit and go someplace else. But you may never ever see that top level person. I mean, if you see them, maybe you see them in a video or in some really large corporate meeting, right? But if you want to share an idea, you would go to your supervisor, and the supervisor would pass that information up through appropriate channels. And now think about that. So there are no right or wrong answers. It's what is your happy place? What is your happy company? I'm scrolling back through. Think about how you would like the job responsibilities. Do you need to see the whole picture? Do you need to be involved in the whole picture? Where should that decision making occur? Would you get frustrated if you had to make those decisions? Would you get frustrated if only the top level people made those decisions? And then how important is it for you to have that opportunity for promotion within the company and that access to the top level? These are the kinds of things that we're going to talk about today. I don't want to make you seasick because our chapter is chapter 8, structuring organizations. And specifically, we want to do that. And we want to talk about this from the perspective of meeting today's challenges. Our environment is always changing. So let me close out of this and let me get to my real chapter slides here. Okay, so chapter 8 is about human resources. We've talked about with management, chapter 7, that management manages material resources and also human resources. And we talked about planning and organizing and leading and controlling. Well, now we're really focusing in on that organizational part. How are we going to organize, right? So, and specifically, we're talking about our human resources. So how are we going to set up our team? If you're the coach, you have to say, I want the defense to look like this, or maybe my offense, I want you to look like this. How do we want that to look? So how are we going to structure our team? And this is an important part of management. So, because we introduced this in chapter 7, that we're going to start with an organization chart. And remember, it's an org chart, okay? So org charts are used, again, to visualize. It's the company's structure. It's the hierarchy and the reporting relationships from one person to another. This is just something generic out of your textbook that could be used. We see things like those special assistants to the president. We see those dotted lines that are things like consultants that are maybe external. We see the employees and how they report to managers, and you see the direct lines there. And, supervisors to managers, that type of thing. And last week we looked at some real world org charts. So I'm not going to do that right now, but you have that in the recording of last week's lecture. Okay. So what we're going to start out exploring in Chapter 8 is popular ways to organize. How are we going to put our team together? Because it can be a strategic advantage or it can be kind of a thorn in our side, quite frankly, okay? One way, the first way that your book talks about is something called departmentalization. And you can think department. How are we going to put these people into a department? Well, departmentalization is when the organization is divided up into units or departments based on function. So in other words, workers are grouped by skills and expertise to specialize their skills, okay, based on specialized skills. So what are the pros and cons? That's what we always want to talk about. Well, the advantages are that employees develop skills and progress within a department as they master skills. You are the entry-level accountant. Then you are the senior accountant. Maybe then you become the supervisor of all the accounting people, right? So you get specialized and you develop those because you're around people who are doing it, right? So you grow because you're around those other people who are doing the same thing. Employees can coordinate work within their job function, and top management can easily direct activities. You're the department manager. You probably sit at the end of a hallway that has your people's desks in that hallway. And you look out into those, desk workers and you say, hey, Jim, can you do this? You have expertise in this. Can you handle this part of the accounting task? We've got a new client. Can you do this? Okay. So that person can do it. Real easy. The people are sitting right there. The company, and this is a big thing, can achieve economies of scale. You will hear this phrase a lot in business, economies of scale. What it means is purchasing in bulk is cheaper. We know that if you buy a whole bunch of little bitty bags of chips, they're expensive. If you instead buy the jumbo bag of chips, then it's less expensive, less packaging, right? Well, same thing, if we can order all of our accounting supplies in bulk, that's an economy of scale because we're going to order a big quantity of our pens and our papers and our folders, and we have certain types of folders and printer paper and things like that. And we're going to do that in bulk because it's cheaper. We want to achieve these economies of scale. So what are the disadvantages? Disadvantages is we may start to lose communication with the rest of the company because we are the accounting department. We are the marketing department. We are, whatever the department is that we are, we're the best and we do what we do and we don't really need to talk to the other people. And so we start to lose that connection. Employees may identify within their department goals rather than the organization's. I'm going to pick on accounting a little bit because I could say that people, that in accounting, our job is to save money. If we start out with $100,000 in the budget, then what we want at the end of the year is $100,000. Is that good for the company? We didn't lose money. We didn't gain money, but see, we're accounting. So the goal of accounting is to keep the money. Well, that's our departmental goal. It's not the company's goal, right? So we've got to be careful about that. The company's response to external changes may be too slow because we're not all working together. We're not even aware of those changes. People may not be trained to take different managerial responsibilities. Instead, we just become specialists. We know accounting. We know marketing. We know, whatever it happens to be, management. This is what we do. Department members may engage in groupthink. We start to think over time, this is the right way, and there's no other way to do it. And we just all accept that idea because we're not interacting with other areas of the company. And groupthink can be a real problem. Here's the gist of what we're saying. People start to work in silos. Now, if you're not familiar with what a silo is, this is a farm. And farms very oftentimes have what they might call grain silos, grain elevators, grain silos. Companies often have silos. They may keep a certain type of raw material in a silo, for example. So it's basically just a big container, and it's literally like you just pour stuff into the top, and there's a slot down here at the bottom that you can open, and maybe grain comes out, right? Because we feed the cows. But we do this because we don't want the grain, the wheat, mixing with the rice. Okay, so we're keeping them in two different silos. We might keep the accounting people separate from the marketing people, separate from the purchasing people, separate from the exporting people, right? This is what we're talking about. And these are the advantages, and these are the disadvantages. Here are some examples of ways to departmentalize. We might departmentalize by product. We might departmentalize by function. So if we, by product, departmentalize, we may group people up, again, by their job skill, marketing, but then we may say, okay, if you deal with books that are about trade, we're going to put you in one department. If you deal with books that are about, that are college textbooks, English, history, math, we're going to put you in this group. If you deal with books that are technical computer books, engineering books, we're going to put you in this one. Okay, so that would be by product. We're a bookstore. What if we did it by function? So maybe we're still a bookstore, but there's our production process where we actually, produce the book. There's our marketing of the book. There's financing the book. We have to hire people, so we have a human resources department, and we have an accounting department, right? So these are all by function. Different ways, just different ways that we could departmentalize. Here are even more ways that your book talks about. Maybe it's by customer group. Maybe we have consumers, but we also have commercial users. We have manufacturers that we have to deal with. And we have different academic institutions, or grade school, community college, university, trade schools, all that kind of stuff. So maybe we do it by customer group. Or geographic location. You see this a lot. We're going to have the people who service Japan, they're going to be in one division. We're going to have our European division, that's one group of people, right? What about by process? We have certain people who cut the book, they're cutters. We have certain people who do the dyeing. We have certain people who do the stitching, right? So by process. You see how we're grouping by a characteristic of the job? All right, even more examples could be a combination, okay? It could be a combination. So what if we started out grouping geographically? And you see this a lot. The laws are going to be different in Canada and in Japan and in Europe and in Korea. So we're going to go ahead and just separate those employees into different groups. Then within each one of those groups, we're going to have a production manager. And then those production managers will have their cutters, their dyers, their stitchers for each division. Okay? So in this case, it starts out geographic and then it goes by process. Here's what we have to be careful of. We have to beware the bureaucracy, because we can start to set up our organization where it has so many layers that it becomes very difficult to get things done. So here's a big one. Look at this. We got our staff down here. Got our team leads. They're over, these same group of people. We have directors. We have executive directors. We have vice presidents. Then we have a president. Well, think about this. We start off, we have a document. Any document needs a signature, right? Well, it needs to go to the team lead for a signature. But the team lead says, I can't sign this. So the team lead asks their director. The director says, I can't sign this. I'm going to have to ask the executive director. Now, think about this for just a minute. Executive director's on vacation this week. Oh no, this person here down on the shop floor, down on the front line with the customers, is waiting for this document to be signed, but executive director is on vacation this week, right? Well, that's okay, because executive director can't sign it anyway. When executive director gets back from vacation, they say this has to go to the president, right? So then it goes on to the president. The president says, oh no, I can't sign this. All that control is up there at the top. I've got to get the president to sign this. So it goes to the president. Look at this. This could be, even if this is an email, these this person, maybe your team lead checks it right away, but maybe the director doesn't get to it until a couple of days later. Executive director, like we said, was on vacation. They send it to the vice president. Well, vice president doesn't get to it this week. They get to it next week. It's to the president. Well, president's very, very busy. So it's going to maybe 2 weeks before the president gets to it. Look at that bureaucracy, right? When an organization has many levels of management who sets rules and regulations and oversees all the decisions, then it could be a bureaucracy. It can take weeks or months for information to pass down. Bureaucracies can annoy customers. Think about that person is waiting for that document to be signed. Some companies are reorganizing to let employees make decisions. Remember, this is about today's environment, and we got to be faster, right? If the team leader was empowered to sign the document, wouldn't it be faster? Or maybe if it's not the team lead, maybe the director could just sign. All right. So here's one of the questions that we're really kind of leading up to. Is the authority in the organization, remember, think about those questions I asked you at the start of the lecture, is that authority centralized or decentralized? Well, if it's centralized, then decision-making authority is maintained at the top of management, at the company's headquarters, for example. If it's decentralized, then decision-making authority is delegated to lower-level managers who might be more familiar with local conditions than headquarters would be, right? You're on the front line, so you know what needs to happen. Centralized, all the decisions at the top. Decentralized, decisions can be made at the lower levels. Let's talk pros and cons, as we like to do. So centralized, greater top-level control. In that sense, there is this may seem a little counterintuitive, there is a little bit more efficiency because we know who needs to make the decision. That person does not need to consult with others. That person is just going to make the decision, right? They don't need to have a committee, and they don't have to do research. They already know what the answer is. And the distribution is more simple because we know who it goes to. It goes to the top, always, never any question. We don't have to figure out who is responsible for this particular decision. Stronger brand and corporate image because that top level person has the vision. They know what they want to do and they're going to do it. They have that clarity in their mind. It's not going to get misunderstood by somebody at a lower level. Disadvantages. Less responsive. We've seen that, right? Less responsive. Less empowerment, interorganizational conflict, lower morale away from headquarters, right? And so if here's the point. Let me actually go back. Here's the point, lower morale away from headquarters. If I'm part of headquarters and I'm part of the decision making, I love it, right? Because I'm in control. I mean, I'm getting to see my vision materialize. If I'm not, if I'm out in the field someplace, I just get told what to do. And it just depends on what you want out of that job. Decentralized. Now, this requires that you have a shared vision and goals. Remember, we talked about that in Chapter 7. Vision, mission, goals, outcomes, right? Well, decentralized, you've got to have that shared vision. Because if it's decentralized, there's better adaptation to customer wants, but we need to make sure we're supporting the common vision. Workers are more empowered. If they know what the vision is, if they know what the goals are, they know what the decision is, just let them make it right there. It's much faster decision making. Higher morale because you're in charge of your destiny. Well, what about the disadvantages? Less efficient? Well, now who makes the decision about the pens that we order? I mean, it's not the top boss, right? Is it Sandy over in purchasing? No. I think now that Fred is the person who does it. No, I heard Fred left. I don't think it's Fred anymore. I think they moved that. You see the problem? Less top management control. So we might get off vision. We might get off the goals. And as a result, weakened corporate image. So we just have to monitor for these things. Now, another thing you talk about when you're organizing in your organization is what is your span of control? You apply to take the management job. And so you may say, how many employees do I supervise? So the span of control is, what is that optimum number of subordinates a manager or supervisors? A manager supervises or should supervise. What is the optimum number? Is it 100? Is it 2? What is the optimum span of control? Okay. A broad span of control allows one supervisor to be responsible for many workers. And organizations use this structure when all the workers have predictable and standardized tasks. Look at these folks over here. What are they doing? I think they are putting, chocolate chips on top of pies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's just assume that there's 6. Well, I say 7 over here. Let's just assume there's the same number of folks over here. So we've got about 14 people. One supervisor could probably supervise 14 people in this scenario. You are supposed to be putting, 20 chocolate chips on every pie. It's predictable, it's standardized, you're either doing it or you're not doing it, you're either here today or you're not. It's pretty predictable, it's pretty standardized, right? The appropriate span narrows at higher levels of the organization, right? I put this in here and I put a little gap there because today the trend, and it's always the trend, is to reduce middle managers and to hire better low-level employees, okay? Here's why that span narrows as it goes up. Let me pull this out. Let's say I'm a regional manager and I've got store managers. These are fairly high-level positions. It's not the same as these ladies putting chocolate chips on the pie. That store manager needs to understand things like scheduling shifts for the workers. They need to understand inventories for the store. They need to know how to keep the records for that. There's a lot going on there. They may have a lot of questions. They may need to have a lot of conversations with the regional to understand that vision, that goal. Are we supposed to be running a sale this week? I'm not sure. Wait a minute, there's supposed to be a promotion coming out next week. Do I have the inventory for it? There's going to need to be a lot of coordination and a lot of communication, and it's different all the time. It's not predictable. It's not standardized. Maybe after you've done it for 10 years, 15 years, maybe then it's predictable. Maybe then it's somewhat standardized to you, right? But there's still a lot of communication that has to occur versus these line supervisors. Now, again, I'll bring this back in here. Today, the trend is to reduce middle managers because down at this line supervisor level, remember, if they're just putting chocolate chips on the pie, it's very predictable. It's not a problem. But if each of these employees is actually the graphic designers for the marketing of the store, well, do they have a general understanding of what needs to be done? If they are better low-level employees, they have college degrees, they have specific skill training, just leave them alone and let them do the work. When they need to ask questions, they can. It makes it possible to have fewer middle managers. Okay. Span of control, we're still talking about. Now we're going to talk about a broad span or a narrow span, and we're going to, again, talk about those pros and cons. When you have a very broad span of control, we're talking about we've got 14 employees. It reduces cost. We don't have to have as many supervisors who are going to be paid more. You can be more responsive to customers, because really you're right there, right? There's not a lot of tiers to the organizational structure. Make the decision fast. You're just going to ask the line supervisor. Line supervisor is going to tell you. And the line supervisor in this case would be empowered, would be very empowered. And that's key to eliminating bureaucracy. Okay, we want to give the decision-making power to that line supervisor. Fewer chances to advance. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 staff members. 1 line supervisor. You want to get promoted? All 8 of you may want to get promoted. There is 1 line supervisor position. Now, what about being overworked? This poor line supervisor may spend their day checking on person 1, 2, 3. Wait, number 4 is on vacation today. I got to hire a replacement for number 4 for today. Make sure you fill out the paperwork saying you were on vacation, right? So there's a lot of tasks. And then if we ask the line supervisor to do some conceptual planning, we talked about conceptual skills in chapter 7, they're going to have to do that after hours when everybody's gone home. So they get overworked very easily. Loss of control. While I'm paying attention to number 8, number 1 is going to go off and do something else that they're not supposed to be doing. Can't control them as well. Less management expertise. When you look at line supervisor, how did you become line supervisor? You probably were the best staff worker. So what did we do? We promoted you to line supervisor. So now you're the line supervisor. Your expertise is not really management. What your expertise is really just in kind of scheduling, and it's all you have time to do. We really don't have the opportunity to teach you those or to engage with you on conceptual or planning activities because there's just simply no time. You have a very broad number of employees that you need to be working with. Narrow. More control by the top level. Look at my example down here. I've got my line supervisor. They have 3 staff members. If I've only got 3 people, I'm going to watch them like a hawk. Think about the parent who has 8 kids versus the parent who has 3 kids. Who's going to get more parental input, right? More control from the top in this narrow structure. More chances for advancement. Instead of 8 people contending, only 3. Greater specialization. Typically when it's narrow, this person is your accounting person. This person is your HR person. Or, maybe they're all in the same department. Maybe they're all human resources people, but this person specializes in FMLA, Family Medical Leave Act stuff. This person specializes in Title VI, Title IX, discrimination type things. This person specializes in work hours and breaks and lunch breaks and when do we need to pay overtime and that type of thing. Less empowerment because there's more control, right? Higher cost because we got a lot more managers. The ratio of management to people is much higher. Delayed decision making. Delayed decision making because now I'm probably going to have to go up to the top, right? So it takes a little. I don't have the control down here to make the decision. I'm going to constantly check with that supervisor because they want the control. Less responsiveness to customers. That's a little odd, isn't it? Here, I already know the answer because I'm just going to make it. The line supervisor is hovering around. They're ready to jump in and answer the questions. But here it's, I'm in charge of Family Medical Leave Act. I'm going to write up my recommendation. I'm going to send that to my supervisor. My supervisor is going to think about it for a little bit. They're going to get back with me. Okay, it's probably a more thoughtful process, which is why it's more narrow. Tall versus flat. The organizational structure, which do you want to work for? An organization that is tall or flat? So tall is characterized by many levels, flat by a few levels. Now think about this in terms of promotion, in terms of your ability to participate in the whole process. In a flat organizational structure, let's say it's the owner, and the owner hires, about 6 people, right? You can, at any time, walk into the owner's office, share some ideas, give your input, right? Owner knows your name because it's a very flat structure. You want to be promoted? I do not see how that's going to happen unless this person retires, quits the company, right? So these are the questions. What are my opportunities to advance? Will I ever get a promotion? Oops, I'm sorry, clicked too many times. What about a tall organization? Well, now, we looked at this a minute ago in terms of bureaucracy, but it does, it doesn't have to be a bureaucracy. We might have more empowered team leaders who have some decision-making ability. But staff person number 4, does the president know your name? No, probably not, right? You see the president on television. You see them on company promotional materials. That's probably it. So let's think about everything we've seen. As we've observed the different org charts, what have we observed? Many solid lines connecting the boss to the subordinate. Each person reports to one and only one boss. We cannot have 2 bosses. And let's now consider that these solid lines may indicate either a line or a line and staff organizational model. You didn't think there was so much to these structures, did you? There's a lot going on with these organizational models. You see, do you not? Hopefully you do. These solid lines. This is the, solid lines. This person, we have no doubt, reports to this person. We know they report to this person, to this person. We know exactly who reports to who, because you see those solid lines. What about the staff? This is a sample line and staff organization. Here's the line. The plant manager reports to the chief executive officer. No doubt in anybody's mind, that's exactly who they report to. What about this human resources department, or the legal department, or the marketing research department? These have dotted lines. Especially legal, we can probably all relate to this. We hire out our attorneys, right? We have a contract. They don't work for us. We have a contract with them. But now the plant manager needs to consult legal about all kinds of things. We are going to fire the supervisor over here. What are the legal things that we need to think about? We're going to do a job posting. What are some of the legalities that we need to think about, right? We're going to implement a new policy on, for our human resources perspective. So we're going to talk to the people. We may have a marketing team. We're thinking about a new promo. The plant manager is going to be involved on that. The CEO is going to be involved on that. Human resources, we may contract out our payroll. And so we definitely have a reporting relationship in the sense that when the plant manager calls that human resources company, if you want to keep the contract, yeah, you have a responsibility, but you're not a full-time employee. So what are we talking about? Line organizations versus line and staff organizations. What does that mean? In a line organization, we just see the lines, the organization in which the authority and responsibility moves downward. What flows up? Accountability. Who's responsible for this, right? So, we're going to hold you accountable because we gave you the responsibility. What about staff? The organization structure in which specialists are added to line managers to provide guidance and support. Let me go back. Human resource manager says, this is what I think we ought to do. Marketing says, this is what I think we ought to do. Legal says, you better not do that. You ultimately, let's say you're the plant manager, have to make that decision. They are giving you guidance. They are your advisors. So they are giving you that guidance. They are the specialist. Okay? Authority. In a line organization, responsibility flows down, accountability flows up. I command you. I give you the task to do X. I give you the responsibility to do X. I'm going to hold you accountable to do X. In line and staff, there is going to be some of this command, but I'm also going to say, what do you suggest? What do you think we should do? And I'm going to think about whatever I'm paying for that advice, so I'm going to consider it very carefully. Discipline. In the line organization, it's strict. I gave you the responsibility. I gave you that authority. I'm going to hold you accountable. Line and staff, it's a little more loose. We're going to talk about it. We're going to think about what's the best possibility. Okay. Executives. The line executives are generalists. I know a little bit about HR. I know a little bit about what's going on with the legal. I mean, I got to follow the laws according to my business, right? I need to know what are the materials that I can use, that type of thing. Line and staff, executives are generalists and staff are specialists. Go back to who was on the dotted line? People with very specific skills, right? Degree of centralization. In a line organization, the control is at the top. The control is only given away by the person at the top. In a line and staff, it's partly centralized and partly decentralized because you cannot control that law firm. You cannot control this other organization, these HR people, okay? It's appropriate for line organizations, small organizations with a fewer number of employees. Line and staff tends to happen very naturally in larger organizations. Line organizations, let's just recap, all people report to one supervisor. Direct two-way lines of responsibility, which moves down, and authority moves, which remember is accountability, flows up, and communication running from top to bottom. We're going to tell you. In a line organization, no specialist, right? No specialist or legal, accounting, human resources, or information technology departments. Line manager issues the order, enforces with discipline, and adjusts the organization to changes. This is all the responsibility of the top line manager. Line and staff. Line personnel, employees who are part of the chain of command that is responsible for achieving organizational goals, have authority to make the decisions. Staff personnel, employees who advise and assist the line personnel in meeting their goals, and it may include those. I do want to go back, in fact, I'll go forward to show this one more time, because I said that these could be external departments, and for sure they could. Remember, we've seen dashed lines on org charts going to these. These could also be internal departments, because this chief executive officer, this could be the vice president of marketing. Maybe marketing is a poor example. Vice president of accounting or purchasing. Let's say purchasing. And for this person to effectively conduct purchasing, they have to interact with the HR department. They have to interact with the legal department. They have to interact with the marketing department. So there's no direct reporting line, but there is an obligation to work together, right? You could almost think of them as contractors in that sense, right? Because you're all collaborating together. There's no direct reporting authority. So line and staff means you have advisors. From other departments, you have advisors. Let's recap. Lots going on. We can organize by department, product, function, customer group, or combination. We can have tall or flat organizations. We can control everything at the top, or we can let some of that authority go down to the lower levels and empower people below. We got to think about our span of control. In other words, how many subordinates? Are the people doing repetitive tasks, very broad? We can have a lot of people. Or is it something that's always changing? It's a different thing every day. If so, we need to have a more narrow span of control, fewer employees. Beware of bureaucracy. Many layers, managers set rules, they oversee all the decisions, and consequently, we got to run everything up the chain of command and wait for everything to come back down. So there's a lot of time and inefficiency involved in that. We have two different types, line and staff organizations, and we talked about staff. Think of staff as advisors. These structures are used today. Must emphasize that. They're based on influential thinkers of the time, Henry Fayol and Max Weber. Now let's look at these two guys. Fayol, for example, this is him. Isn't that something? His work was one of the first comprehensive statements of general theory of management. So we trace our methods for management all the way back to him. He's the one who told us for Chapter 7, it was him who came up with plan, organize, lead, control, those 4 things, right? Guess what? He actually had a 5th thing. His 5th thing was forecasting. And it's where managers receive feedback about a process and then make adjustments and analyze data based on the adjustment. I think this one is actually still a very important function of management. You have to be able to, really good managers often have a lot of experience with the company or at least in the industry. It depends on how much your organization is changing, because if your organization is changing a lot, then to have a lot of experience with the organization is not as important. It's more important to have experience with the industry. And so being able to forecast, to predict, to assess, and to analyze data, very, very important. But he's the one, Henry Fayol. He came up with plan, organize, lead, control. Now, he also had actually 10 principles of organization. Unity of command. Think of this. 1. To be unified is as one. Each worker is to report to one and only one boss. There's a hierarchy. All workers should know who they report to. Managers should have the right to give orders and expect that to be followed. You've got to be careful about this when you can't just arbitrarily dismiss something, because your manager actually does have the right to tell you what to do and to expect that you will do it. Division of labor. Functions are to be divided. We talked about departmentalizations. How are you going to divvy up the labor? And even within that department, how are we going to divide the labor? Subordination of your individual interest to the general. It is not about your home, your family, your personal well-being, not according to Henry Fayol. Workers are to think of themselves as a coordinated team. The goals of the team are more important than the goals of the individuals. Do you think that still holds true today? It's tough. This is tough. Do you think it still holds true today? Maybe the balance is different. Maybe we tend to look more at the one if we can, for as long as we can. We try to help the one. I don't know. I'd be interested to see what you think. Authority. Managers have the right to give an order and the power to enforce obedience. Authority and responsibility are related. Whenever authority is exercised, responsibility arises. I think we are seeing this much more so today than ever before. If you are the manager, you do have a responsibility. You have to get the work done. You have to. Your stockholders rely on it. Your company will go out of business if you do not produce a product, or if your product is poor quality, right? Somebody gets hurt from it. What if one of the workers is doing something that is stopping productivity, is causing an unsafe work environment, is causing an unsafe product? You, as the manager, may have to exercise your authority, but you have responsibility also, right? What are the things that we talk about in the news now? If you have somebody with a mental health issue, PTSD, a certain stress, a health condition, you have a responsibility. And even Fayol recognized that. Isn't that interesting? Degree of centralization, what we're talking about, is it fully centralized? Is it fully decentralized? Is it someplace in between? What's the amount of decision-making power vested at the top? We have to decide. What is the scale? Clear communication channels. All workers should be able to reach others in the organization quickly and easily. Today, quickly is seconds, right? Email and text messages, and we have messaging tools like Slack, that we use to very quickly reach everyone. There is an order. Materials and people should be placed and maintained in the proper order. This is a biggie, and managers focus on this all the time. Do you have the filing cabinets for the supply? Do you have these shelves, the warehousing space? Where are we going to put these? How are they going to be stored? Are they safe in the way that they're stored? Equity. Look at this. A manager should treat employees and peers with respect and justice. How old did we say Henry Fayol was? And he is talking about equity, and he recognizes the need for that. What's going to happen if the workers do not feel that they are treated with respect and justice. And I think we've seen cases of that. This is pronounced esprit de corps. Esprit de corps. You hear this in terms of the military a lot, but esprit de corps is important to all organizations. It's a spirit of pride and loyalty that should be created among people in the firm. I love working for my organization. I feel pride in that. I feel a commitment to that. Esprit de corps. All right. So, who is this? Now we're moving on to Max Weber. And he stood on the shoulders of Fayol. And he said, you know what? Employees just need to do what they're told. Isn't that something you kind of tell? He's old school, right? He's old school. So employees just need to do what they're told. So Weber added to Fayol's principles. But not as bad as you may think. What he really tried to emphasize was documentation and formalizing the process. He said, you know what, if you're saying that the workers have jobs, let's write up some job descriptions so that they know what they're supposed to be doing. If there's a certain way you want something done, let's write some rules. If there's supposed to be a vacation form, sick leave form, let's write those up. What are the decision guidelines? What are the detailed records, right? There has to be, think of Fayol's equity and justice. There needs to be consistency in the procedures. There needs to be some kind of regulation, a policy manual. We need to know what those rules are, right? Staffing and promotion based on qualifications. Think about this. How can we do that if we don't even know what the job description is? All right, so here's some key terms that we've talked about with Fayol and Weber. Managers control workers. Tough pill to swallow, right? But that's the hierarchy that we're working in. Speaking of key terms, hierarchy, a system in which one person is at the top and they're ranked or sequential ordering from the top down. There is a chain of command. We talk about the line of authority, the line on that org chart that moves from the top to the lowest level. Organization chart, an org chart, is a visualization device that shows relationship among people and divides the organization's work. It's so that we know, are we divided by process? Are we divided geographically? Are we divided by function? And then we know who reports to who. But business is changing. We have more global competition. We have declining economies. We have faster technological change. We have a pressure to protect the environment. Customer expectations are changing. We have high quality products with fast, friendly, and all at a low cost. That's what we got to deliver. Whew. That's a tall order. Got a lot of stuff going on here. So we have two more models that have come up in more recent times. One of them is called a matrix. You might hear there are certain businesses that will say so-and-so was matrixed over to somebody else. Short term, great for projects, brings experts together, usually temporarily. It does not change who reports to who. It does not change the line structure. Commonly used for product development, creativity, special projects, rapid communication, and interdepartmental teamwork. So this is a matrix. We're going to see this in just a minute. But the other one, the second type, is cross-functional. This is more long-term. It's goal-focused. It builds solutions. It's teams of people from multiple departments that work together. Teams are empowered. That is so key. Teams are empowered to make the decisions without management approval. So these cross-functional teams tend to be self-managed cross-functional teams. All right? Think about this. Here's a matrix organization. I'm going to put a quick team together. We've got projects, we've got manufacturing, we've got marketing, finance, and engineering. I'm going to grab a person from each of these areas, and I'm going to put them together for a short-term project, right? See how that's going to be? I'm going to matrix these people together. I'm going to matrix these people together. So I may form teams where I have people, this breaks down the silo. That's the benefit of this. It breaks down the silo. Advantages of matrix. Managers have flexibility in assigning the people to the projects. We don't have to assign you if we don't want to. Interorganizational cooperation and teamwork is encouraged. You get to meet the people from the other department. Creative solutions, because people from other departments may know about something you don't know about. Organizational resources are used efficiently, right? Because we're all coming together, and so we can, the flow, we don't have to go through as many steps. Disadvantages, it can be costly and complex. Who reports to who? What is the team supposed to be doing? What about my regular daily task? Employees may be confused. Who am I loyal to? The team or to my department? Maybe I'm divided on this. You must have good interpersonal skills. I call this work and play with others. If you do not work and play well with others, you may not be on a team. And if that's important, if being matrixed is important to your promotion, that could be a problem. It may only be a temporary solution to a long-term problem. So you're going to throw in with this group of matrix people together, but you are going to have to break up. They may adapt your proposal. They may not, or they may do it for a little while and then it may be over, right when you start really liking it. Cross-functional self-managed teams are groups of employees from different departments who work together on a long term. Helps fix the problem of matrix-style teams by establishing long-lived teams. Teams are empowered to make decisions without management approval. We said that. Cross-functional teams work best when the voice of the customer is involved. How many times do we form a committee and we say, this is how things ought to be? We don't even, to give the best service to the customer, we never even ask the customer if that's what they want. Teams that include customers, suppliers, distributors go beyond organizational boundaries, and that's kind of a key thing with these cross-functional teams. Government coordinators may even be involved to assist. We're going to bring the Blue Oval plant, Ford plant, out to Tennessee. That's great. We're going to have to talk to government people. We need to talk to our suppliers and to our distributors. We need to talk to our customers. We might need to talk to the union, the leaders of each of the unions involved in our company. We need to talk to all these people. So there's going to be a lot of people, and we're going to have to be empowered to make some decisions within that team. Think about this. Maybe this brings it more closer to home. This is an operating room. We've got doctors, we've got nurses, we've got technicians, anesthesiologists. We've got this person looking back here at the, maybe this person is a radiologist. They all come together to perform a project, and that project is this patient, and they want to make sure that this patient gets the care that they need. So they all bring their specialties to the operating room. Building a successful team. Here's the important conditions. You need to have a clear purpose as you put together your company. You need to communicate your goals, and what is your vision for the company, for the product? What is the mission? What are the goals? What are the outcomes? Create and maintain a culture, transparency, openness, equity, who reports to who, chain of command, everybody having input into things, right? We need to understand what that culture is. Mutual accountability. If you have the authority at the top and you're delegating that down, the trade-off is that we do need to hold you accountable, and we need to hold our team members accountable. You need to be specific instead of vague. The more clear you are in communicating what is the problem that's going to be addressed, the better the results are going to be. Okay. That brings me to the end of our presentation. We're about an hour in, and I am going to go ahead and stop there. Make sure, I'm tempted to go just a little bit further, but make sure you are doing your work for this week. You've got to do your Chapter 8 assignments. There are two more. Let me go ahead and go to this. There's two more. Here's the things that we've covered. Here's what we've not covered yet. The interfirm cooperation and coordination. Again, interfirm means occurring between or involving two or more firms. So be aware of that. Occurring between or involving. So external, my firm and another firm. And we also have not discussed how organizational culture can help businesses adapt to change. So make sure you're looking at that. Just quickly say, businesses work together because nobody is an island. There's a case that you'll read about with Nike. They bring people together so that they can be better and cheaper. But I've got more I can talk about, but I think there's a lot here, and I think you need to spend, I think it's heavy stuff, and I think this is a lot of talking. And so I am going to go ahead and stop here and ask you to work on your assignments for the week. You've got your Chapter 8 Learn Smart, your video quiz, your application activity, your bonus activity. So make sure that you are doing that, and we'll stop here at an hour and use the remaining time to get, make sure you are doing your Chapter 8 work so you don't fall behind. All right, thanks, folks.